MARPOL Annex VI Simplified. MARPOL Annex VI, adopted in 1997 and entered into force in 2005, is a critical IMO regulation aimed at reducing air pollution from ships. It addresses emissions of sulfur oxides, SOx, nitrogen oxides, NOx, particulate matter, ozone-depleting substances, ODS, volatile organic compounds, VOCs, and greenhouse gases, GHGs. 1. Application. MARPOL Annex VI applies to all ships, except where expressly provided otherwise in the Annex's regulations. Ships below 400 GT are not required to have an International Air Pollution Prevention (IAPP) certificate, but their condition and equipment must still meet the Annex's requirements. To demonstrate compliance with the requirements, ships must obtain an Engine International Air Pollution Prevention (EIAPP) certificate and an International Air Pollution Prevention (IAPP) certificate. Marine diesel engines exceeding 130 kilowatts, regardless of their gross tonnage of the vessel, and if the vessel is constructed on or after January 1, 2000, should have EIAPP certificate. 2. Key exemptions and exceptions. Emissions necessary for securing the safety of the ship or saving lives at sea are exempt. Emissions resulting from accidents and damage suffered by the ship or its equipment. Ship trials for research purposes are also excluded. Emissions from seabed activities on marine platforms are not covered. 3. Key provisions of MARPOL Annex VI. Sulfur oxides and particulate matter. Regulation 14. MARPOL Annex VI Regulation 14 sets limits on sulfur oxides and particulate matter emissions from ships. The limit for sulfur content in fuel oil was reduced from 3.5% mass by mass to 0.5% mass by mass outside designated emission control areas on January 1, 2020. Ships operating within ECAs must use fuel with a sulfur content of 0.1% mass by mass. Sulfur content limits. Outside ECAs, the sulfur content of fuel oil used on board ships is limited to 0.5% mass by mass. In ECAs, ships are required to use fuel with a sulfur content of 0.1% mass by mass. Compliance methods. Ships can comply by using low-sulfur fuel, LSFO, MGO, or LNG. Installing exhaust gas cleaning systems, scrubbers, or switching to alternative fuels, ammonia, hydrogen, methanol. Fuel oil changeover. Ships using separate fuel oils for different geographical areas must have a written procedure for fuel oil changeover, ensuring sufficient time for the fuel oil system to be flushed. B. Nitrogen oxides. Regulation 13. MARPOL Annex VI, Regulation 13, focuses on controlling nitrogen oxide emissions from marine diesel engines. It mandates that engines with a power output exceeding 130 kilowatts installed on ships must meet specific NOx emission limits. This regulation applies to most marine diesel engines, with a few exceptions, and aims to reduce air pollution from shipping. MARPOL Annex VI implements NOx emission progressively reduce emissions from marine diesel engines. Tier 1 limits apply to engines on ships built before January 1, 2011. Tier 2 applies to ships built on or after January 1, 2011 globally. Tier 3 limits apply to ships built on or after January 1, 2016 operating within designated emission control areas, ECAs, with Tier 2 applying outside of ECAs. The details of the limits of NOx emission is detailed in the attached. C. MARPOL Annex VI, Regulation 12, concerning ozone-depleting substances, ODS, prohibits new installations containing ODS, including HCFCs, on ships built on or after January 1, 2020. This regulation aligns with the Montreal Protocol, aiming to phase out ODS and protect the ozone layer. Existing ODS equipment can continue to operate, but deliberate discharge of ODS is prohibited. New installations containing ODS, including HCFCs, are prohibited on ships built on or after January 1, 2020. The regulation enforces the phase-out of HCFCs, which are a type of ODS, by the specified date. Existing ODS equipment on ships can continue to be used, but deliberate emissions, including those from servicing, repairing, or disposing of equipment, are prohibited. Minimal releases associated with recapture or recycling of ODS are exempt from the prohibition on deliberate emissions. When servicing or decommissioning systems containing ODS, gases must be collected and landed at appropriate reception facilities for banking or destruction. Ships with ODS-containing systems or equipment required to have an International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate must maintain an ODS record book to track all related operations. Delivery to reception facilities. When ODS or equipment containing ODS are removed from ships, they must be delivered to appropriate reception facilities for disposal or treatment. D. Greenhouse gas (GHG) emissions, Chapter 4, added in 2011. The IMO's GHG strategy aims to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions from international shipping, with targets to reduce emissions by at least 20% from 2008 level by 2030, at least 70% by 2040, and achieve net zero emissions by or around 2050. Energy Efficiency Design Index. This index sets mandatory reduction targets for the carbon intensity of new ships. It requires calculations and verifications according to IMO guidelines. Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan. This plan provides a framework for operational energy efficiency improvements for all ships. EEXI and CII. In 2022, IMO adopted new regulations on carbon intensity and rating systems, including the Energy Efficiency Existing Ship Index, EEXI, and the Carbon Intensity Indicator, CII. Rates ships from A, best, to E, worst, based on CO2 emissions per transport work. Ships must develop corrective action plans if rated D or E for 3 years. The DCS, which began in 2019, collects data on fuel oil consumption for ships over 5,000 gross tons. This data is used to assess and improve the energy efficiency of ships. E. Regulation 15 of MARPOL Annex VI focuses on controlling VOC, volatile organic compounds, emissions from tankers in designated ports or terminals. It requires these ports to have approved vapor emission control systems, VECs, and encourages the use of VOC management plans for crude oil tankers to minimize emissions. Specifically, MARPOL Annex VI requires crude oil tankers to have and implement a VOC management plan. Key aspects of Regulation 15. Port/terminal regulation. A party to the MARPOL Protocol can designate ports or terminals under its jurisdiction where VOC emissions from tankers are regulated. Notification to IMO. A party must notify the International Maritime Organization about the ports or terminals it regulates, including information about the size of tankers, cargo types requiring VECs, and the effective date of the control. Vapor emission control systems. Port authorities must ensure VECs are available and operated safely in designated ports to prevent undue delay to ships. VOC management plans. Crude oil tankers must have a VOC management plan approved by their administration. These plans outline arrangements, equipment, and procedures for minimizing VOC emissions during cargo transfer and other operations. Scope. Regulation 15 applies to oil and chemical tankers, but not to gas carriers. List of required certificates and documents to be maintained on board with respect to Annex VI of MARPOL is attached for reference. Thank you for watching the video. For more marine topics, please subscribe the channel. Please help us with your valuable feedback to improve the contents.